So, okay.
She's ready, so as soon as you. We may be live now.
There needs to be a
But
big
just make
red
sure you-
light.
Just make sure you turn on your mic to start talking.
You guys all make sure your mics are on.
When you talk? No, just when you talk.
Can you bring up the other email? Usually sends out two. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. And Dr. Allen, if you'd lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I would like to welcome all the visitors tonight. This is our first live broadcast of the Grain Valley School Board. So you're on the internet now forever. Takes us to B and C, adoption of the agenda and the consent agenda. Need a motion to adopt both. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign. That will take us to patron comments. Any school district patron may present information to the board at this time. Presentations will be limited to no more than 5 minutes. The board will not take action on any issue not included on the published agenda. However, all comments will be taken into consideration by the Board of Education. Patrons are requested not to discuss individual faculty, staff, or students. Patrons are reminded that this is a public forum and comments relative to individuals could result in litigation. However, any patron may request to meet with the board in executive session. No response will be given by the board at this time. We do have one patron that would like to speak. Jan?
Thank you. I'd like to begin by saying, while you all always look nice, you're especially spiffy this evening. Also, I'd like to thank you for the beginning of our being on YouTube. That's wonderful. The reason I arise tonight is about the board code of ethics that was voted on at the last workshop. I looked it up, given my very poor internet abilities. And I think I found the Grain Valley Code of Ethics through the Board of Education. The second bullet point seems to say, I will avoid any conflict of interest or appearance, it says on, and should be of, impropriety that can result from my position, and will not use my board membership for personal gain or publicity. I looked up Blue Springs code, which is code 1.28, and it says the board member shall refrain from using board positions for the benefit of self, family, members, or business associates, which I believe to be stronger. Not that I have a strong objection to what we have standing, but what I seem to have heard, unless I misunderstood at the workshop meeting, was that taking of something of value that is offered as a result of the board membership would be okay as long as the president of the board, or in the case of the president, Dr. Welly, approves it. I want to be very clear here. I have no question about the integrity of any member of this board, My problem is with the policy, we don't know who in the future might be on our board, and I would like to see something as simple as board members don't take anything from anybody who is doing business with the school board or might be doing business from the school board. I think something simple like that and something clear, a clear line, would be a better use and especially increase confidence on the part of the members of the school district. Thank you.
Thank you. Jan was the only patron wanting to speak. Takes us to E, our reports. The first one, we'll hear about our bond repayment.
Yes, tonight we welcome Brad Wegman and Wesley Townsend from LJ Hart and Company. We'll have them make their way to the podium. They're going to present to the board the advantages for us to prepay our $3 million Series 2019A bonds. And the move would save us more than $200,000 in interest over the life of those bonds. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. We turn it over to you.
Good evening. Thanks for having us tonight. The very first slide you have is just a history of the financings with our company, and it dates back to 2011, as you can see. And each year it lists the par amount. Since 2011, we've had $133.3 million par amount, and as a result of 10 refundings and 1 prepayment, the district has saved just over $5.6 million in future interest expense, and that's one thing we're hoping to improve on tonight.
So when we flip to the next slide, we just have the existing payments on the Series 2019A bonds. The maturities are 2024 to 2026, $3 million, and we'll be prepaying all $3 million of those 2019A bonds on September 1st, 2023. The interest savings to the district by making this prepayment will be $225,000, and it's being done because of the district's Form C calculation. Each August, when the district sets their levy, it looks at the balance in the debt service account in the next 2 years of upcoming payments. And so we're able to prepay these $3 million of bonds off early to keep the levy in place and save that interest expense. On the last slide, we have a copy of the statement of cash flows that just illustrates the current situation with the district's debt service fund levy. In both scenarios, we're assuming that the district includes the $10 million of authorized but unissued bonds in the balances. And so on the left-hand side, we have the current situation before the $3 million prepayment. Then on the right-hand side, we have the balances and payments reflecting the $3 million prepayment on September 1st. So overall, the district's in a very healthy position. And going forward, just looking at some of the other bond issues, we've got short call features, similar to the call feature on the 19A bonds on many of the other district's outstanding financings. The 2020A and 2020C bonds are callable March 1st, 2025. So depending on what the assessed valuation does, if we need additional prepayments, you have plenty of call features on your existing financings to do so in the future. Are there any questions at all for Wesley and I about the prepayment?
I do have a clarifying question. I just want to make sure that moving forward, if by prepaying this series of bonds at this time, it gives the board the flexibility, if they either now or in the future wanted to transfer the dollars from the $1.70 debt service to an operating levy, that this is advantageous for us to make that move at some point in the future if needed.
Yes, and that's a great question. And so that's one of the main things we're keeping in mind with the structures on all the existing financings is not to be too aggressive and have principals structured right out of the gate that would limit that potential. Instead, we're being more conservative, doing wrap structures on some of the financings, but having those short call features of 5 years or less. So we're not being overly aggressive with the repayment structures to maximize the district's flexibility for potentially levy transfer or any number of options down the road. So this preserves that, and that's where I was looking at the existing other financings. you have tons of flexibility to move in whatever direction that you want to go, and the timing of a potential levy transfer. If you think, do we want to do it a year from now, 2 years, or 3 years from now, we can have the flexibility to just prepay from any one of your existing financings to set you up for the timeline that you wish, versus putting a lot of principal up front on any of these new issues that would delay it 4 or 5 years. We're steering clear of that and just using more conservative structures and having the call features in place to tailor fit it to your timeline.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Just, I guess my question would be to Dr. Gooch, from a cash flow standpoint, no issues with prepayment?
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Takes us to number 2, the superintendent's report. Oh, I'm sorry, that is an action item. So I'd entertain a motion to authorize the redemption of $3 million principal amount of general obligation bonds, Series 2019A, and the publication of notice of redemption.
Second.
Julie? Yes. Jason?
Yes.
Lance?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Jeff? Yes. Sarah? Yes. Jared? Yes. The motion passes. Now it takes us to number 2.
Very good. You have the report from the administration there in front of you. I want to hit a couple of highlights. We welcomed all of our teachers back on Tuesday. We had a all employee convocation ceremony, and that was a lot of fun. We got to recognize benchmark years of service with our employees. We got to recognize our Teacher of the Year and our support staff Employee of the Year. So we had a great time with that. Also, between yesterday and today, we've had 6th grade orientation, 9th grade orientation. We've had Meet the Teacher night for middle schools and high schools yesterday. We've had elementary and early childhood Meet the Teacher conferences all throughout the day today. So it is on, and we are gearing up for the start of the school year, and the first day of school is on Tuesday. With that, and for all the great things that are going on, we do have several job openings, and so we mostly need paraprofessionals and custodians. So if you know anybody that is interested in looking, we'd love to have them join our team. We also have openings for drivers, bus aides, and food service, but mostly we need paraprofessionals and custodians. And we are looking in the days and the next couple of weeks to host some sort of open house type job fair to help promote and make it easier for people who may be thinking about it or may be interested or curious, where they can come in and they can talk to our directors, and we can do that all at one time and get the application processes started. And then at the bottom of your highlights page, you also have a calendar of events. One thing that I would add, and I can share this with the board electronically as well, is we have set the initial meeting for the Finance Committee and the Facilities Planning Committee that you established last month. They will meet on August 29th at 5 p.m. here at the Leadership Center, and their inaugural meeting will be a joint meeting. So both of those groups will meet together. We'll talk about the scope of work for both committees, and we'll do a little bit of a state of the district, a mini state of the district address, just to bring both groups up to speed on the current state of the district as we see it for finance and facilities. So I would answer any questions on any of those items or anything else in the report. I would also invite Dr. Gooch and Dr. Allen if there's anything else from their reports they wish to highlight at this time. But we'd take any questions.
With regard to the open positions, what contingency plans do we have in place for buildings that don't have custodial service or enough custodial service at this point?
Dr. Gooch?
So what we have, we do have all buildings covered partly. There might be situations where we aren't fully staffed in the night shift, and so what they'll do is they'll have different types of runs they do. They'll prioritize bathrooms, trash, things like that. And then if it's a particular situation, what can then happen is our maintenance department, when they come in the morning of the following day, they can finish up any specific run or any specific area that needs addressed in regards to clean and things like that, so.
So do we have enough bus drivers then to,
Yeah,
to do
bus drivers right
routes?
now, we are fully capable of making all of our routes. Really, the biggest issue, of course, is custodial right now. But
Okay.
bus drivers, we're fine there. We still have openings, but we can maintain all of our routes with our permanent subs. Food service, we can serve all the lunches and breakfasts that we need. So we're okay right now, but we just definitely need help. And I would say, again, custodial and para support are the biggest challenges.
Got it, thank you.
I know we've asked before, how many are we short on both of those categories?
Last time I checked in with both directors, I believe we are 8 custodians down, and we are 9 paraprofessionals down.
8 custodials out of how many total employees in that division?
30, give or take 30. So what we've got is our night crew, skeleton crew, they're working extra hard. I mean, that's, yeah.
I have a question about our paras. What is the plan for them, for our special needs students as we start the year, since many of them are required to have them by the state?
It's going to look more like a substitute situation to start. We do have a lot of people who've signed up. We just had a sub-orientation today. So we do seem to be moving in the right directions with substitutes. And a lot of times, sometimes, we're able to get those substitutes then into para positions when we find those that just really connect with a building or with particular students. So we are hopeful to be able to continue hiring, but right now it'll look like substitutes.
And whether they take a regular teaching substitute position or a para, it pays the same for the day?
More or less. I mean, they're pretty comparable. It depends. We do have different levels of para positions depending on if you've taken the certification test or the student that you're assisting. So it's hard to, if you're on level 1 of a para, it might pay a little less than a sub, but if you have your para certification, then it would pay more. So it just sort of depends.
In regards to substitute, though, yes, that's paid the same. The substitute position is.
Yes.
Okay.
Whether para or classroom teacher.
And the reason I ask, somebody calls in to take a sub job and we ask them to take a para job that day, they're counting on whatever the sub
Correct.
pay is.
Yes,
I didn't want that to change.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions?
I had a question on a different topic. The first back-to-school fair was supposed to have been held August 10th, is that correct? Do we know how many families attended that? Because that was something that was one of the Bright Futures initiatives of getting our families at needs. And those, do we know how many attended? Was it a successful event?
Dr. Allen?
So we had an enormous number of families sign up for it being year 1. I mean, we had close to somewhere around 90 plus kids. So we were almost at 100 kids. Turnout at the actual fair was low. Our fair itself was wonderful and amazing. It's amazing how our community comes out to support, and they all brought extra things to do, from yard games to just above and beyond the service they were going to provide anyway. So the good news is that all of the supplies, back snacks, giving the basics, we had some free sports physicals. All of those will still be available just at the building level when the students arrive. So while they might not get the experience of coming in and interacting, we will definitely still provide those services. So we've done a feedback survey from both the families and the partners, and I will say that our community partners who came were very sweet. They're like, we've done year 1 of these fairs before, and this is kind of how it goes. We're going to try to shift the time later. So far, we've decided we might even do sort of a drive-through option for families who aren't interested in coming. So we're kind of brainstorming how to get more people to show up day of, so they can be, all of those services can be available to them. But we'll get everybody what they need either way.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Takes us to new business. the CSIP annual priorities.
So we bring to you tonight this is your first look at our proposed annual priorities for the upcoming school year. These are our year-over-year priorities for our CSIP 2026, our 5-year plan. So this would be, we're starting our 3rd year into our 5-year plan. We have 5 priorities at this point, and I'm going to kind of go over them in a really big picture, and then we'll see where the discussion takes us. Not an action item tonight. This is an initial read. We'll certainly want to bring these back and talk about them more next month. But priority number 1 is improving early literacy instruction consistent with the latest science of reading. We've been hitting this really hard the last couple of years, and you can see by our measurements, we've got 4 key things we want to accomplish there by the spring of 2024. Priority number 2 is to develop a comprehensive facilities audit leading to a new long-range facilities plan for all facility and program needs. So if I could translate that for everybody, we've talked about how we're approaching capacity at the elementary schools, despite the fact that our student enrollment at the elementary schools has been flat now for 12 years. But our program needs are growing, and so the programs for students who need extra help takes up more classrooms at the elementary level. So we are getting closer to needing something done at the elementary level to address that issue. We also we're not at capacity at our early childhood center right now at the start of the school year, but we grow. That program starts a little smaller in the fall, and it gets bigger as we get closer to the spring, but every spring gets bigger than the spring before it. So looking ahead, we want to make a plan for when and how we would expand our early childhood facility offerings. We have a growing number of students in our school district whose needs are beyond what we're currently capable of handling in district, and so we will contract with outside sources to help provide education for those students. So moving into the future, we'd like to have a plan, both from a program standpoint and a facility standpoint, how we could build the capacity to not only keep those students here in our district, but we maybe could end up being a destination and resource to partner with other neighboring school districts where potentially those students could come here. But these are and then of course, we still have work to do at Grain Valley High School. Our other buildings, although, everything has been new in the last 20 years or so, it seems, buildings do age, and so we want to make sure that comprehensively we're taking care of the needs of all of our facilities. So through the work of this comprehensive plan and this priority, our team would work to come back and develop a plan looking into the future. Priority number 3 would refine our K-12 MTSS processes addressing student behavior. And priority number 4 would be to develop a school and district safety plans that prioritize any needed improvements. So we're pleased with where we're at on our safety and emergency preparedness. And in fact, in a lot of ways, we're a leader in school safety, but it's not a category where you can just be done. You have to, and we think it's time to really take a comprehensive look at our safety practices and make sure that moving forward, we're doing the most important things that we can to keep our schools safe and to instill confidence that our schools and students are safe. And then priority number 5 is to evaluate local funding options and propose a levy level and a timeline for a ballot measure for a vote by our patrons. So the last time that our levy went to a vote of the people in our community was 2004. So, if you're looking ahead, we're coming up on 20 years. And that is, if you think about how our district and our community has evolved and changed in the last 20 years, that is a long time. So we know whether it's soon or not, but probably sooner. We have to have a plan for what we need, when we need it, and then we need to be able to have the input from our community on even what type of ballot measure our community would support and when they would support it. So that's a really big deal, and all we're saying by prioritizing that this year is that by December, in the next few months, so by December, we would have a solid plan on what is needed, when is needed, and we'd have that recommendation back to this board at that time. But those are our 5 priorities. This is the fewest number of annual priorities we've ever had, but we feel like it is no less work than in years where we've had 9 priorities or 12 priorities. These 5 are really big deals, and we would put a lot of resources towards them. But it is your first read, so we want your first reactions to them. Any questions that you have or anything that you want us to be thinking about before we bring them back to you again.
I had a question on priority 3 when it says that we're implementing the character education program. Is that something that's uniform across levels? So like, are all elementaries doing the same, or are they doing something different? Same with middle and then high school, and then the measures for that, is there pre and post? Is it something as a box that's saying that check it and we're done? Like, what measure are we using to see the success of that? Because I know that MTSS has the success score based on the teacher survey results, but I just didn't know how the character education would be addressed.
Yeah, and we definitely want multiple measures on this one, but I'm gonna let Dr. Allen speak to this, because she and her team have been working diligently to serve this one up.
So this was an initiative that we felt like we were not financially in a position to do yet. And then when we were awarded the Children's Services Fund, I'm flying over here, sorry. That gave us the opportunity to have that paid for us for over the course of the next 3 years. So really, in year 1, we've given complete autonomy to the buildings. We see it almost like a pilot, if you will, to try out various programs. Some have made a decision, and some are still making a decision at this point. And so we will implement those this year, and then at our regular admin meetings, we will get feedback about thoughts on what's working, what isn't working, and our goal would be to move, and it's hard to move uniform K-12 in a program like that, but we would love elementary to be on the same page, middle and high, just based on developmental needs. So that's what we're hoping for. We have 2 more years to have it paid for, so hopefully we have really good practices and sort of a streamlined process that we feel is highly effective moving forward. So this is a measure that next year we might be measuring something beyond kind of piloting multiple programs. We hope to grow that over the next 3 years.
And then what are some of the programs that we're piloting?
So the one I know for sure that's been selected, North Middle School selected Character Strong, so we've got that one on board and ready to go. We were gifted I Am Noticed for Matthews Elementary, so that's free on top of this grant, so we don't even have to pay for that one. And then others are still at the point where they're deciding, as far as I know. That's the only one that we have purchased so far, but we've got a couple more weeks to go, so, yeah.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Priority number 5, the objective is to attract and retain teachers with pay and benefits. Is that too narrow? Should it be broader than just teachers at this point? The conversation before was we're missing custodians, paras. I'm just asking if we need to broaden that out just a bit.
Yes, when the objective was first drafted and adopted 2 or 3 years ago, it was specifically to teachers. But ever since then, our analysis and comparison, and then our recommendations for pay increases have all been comprehensive. So we can note that and make sure that we're really clear that it's not exclusively teachers. We want we want to be competitive across the board. And in fact, I'd take it a step further, because we want to make sure that we're also competitive for our coaching and our sponsors and those folks that are doing all those other things on the side as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
And same vein with priority number 2. Really, the objective is to maintain class sizes. Is that bigger than just buildings?
So if I understand the question, the objective is focused on maintaining class sizes within a certain standard, but the priority language, it talks about this comprehensive facilities analysis.
Facilities
So
related.
we just feel like for what's needed at this time, we're concerned that if we only deal with the facility concerns at Prairie Branch Elementary, for example, then we run the risk of playing whack-a-mole, that we find a solution specific to Prairie Branch right now, But if we had looked out 3 to 5 years in anticipation of some other program needs, maybe there's another solution that does both, that both addresses, takes into account what we're going to need in the future for early childhood, maybe for some other behavioral or therapeutic instruction. So we just, before we even start to take the tighter moves specific for what our class size issues are right now, we just want to be more, we just feel like we're at that point, we need to be more
Yeah,
comprehensive.
I think if we were just talking Prairie Branch, we'd be going narrower. I'm saying,
Yeah.
should we be talking more about brick and mortar? Or less about brick and mortar and more about the other components? So the objective is maintain class sizes. We're just
Right.
talking about brick and mortar. There's also additional teachers. I mean,
Yes.
that's huge.
Yes.
To maintain class sizes. It's much larger than just the building.
Our biggest
That's my
hurdle,
question.
our biggest hurdle right now that's keeping us from moving forward on this is the brick and mortar.
Okay.
So if it were just a teacher issue, we would have made that a priority with the budget this year. So that's why we're focused on the brick and mortar and the planning, because we think we know what our program needs are, but we want to peel it back and get more input from more staff, so that we can really make, because we could otherwise bring forward some very big and expensive recommendations, and we just want to make sure that all those recommendations are well informed. But yes, they're primarily brick and mortar, but I think there are some opportunities in the next 3 to 5 years to make some significant program style changes in how we deliver alternative education, for example. And if we can lump some of these issues together and solve them in creative ways, then the next time we have a bond issue, we have more options to give the board to consider, and which priorities are the most critical. Let's say that we have $30 million bond issue in another 3 years or so. We've got a lot of things, a lot of high priority places where we could use a lot more than $30 million to solve those brick and mortar issues, but we want the board to be fully informed to be able to make some really tough decisions on how we're going to spend those resources. So I'm with you, but intentionally, we're here for a reason too.
Yeah, so I guess, all that being said, you may want to consider reframing the objective just a little bit. Not necessarily saying, hey, you should do that, but think about it. It's maintain class sizes consistent with district standards, in my opinion, is much larger.
Yes,
Maybe the objective should be closer to the priority in definition.
thank you.
Anything else?
Just a question on priority 4. It says that this plan will be the result of stakeholder input and an assessment of current safety practices. Do we have thoughts or plans already in place for getting stakeholder feedback? Is that something that is still out there and yet to be done, or have we already received some of that?
No, we don't currently have a plan in place for that. But if the board feels like this is the right move at the right time, then that would be part of the plan. And so we would ask for, we survey everybody for their do students feel safe at school? Parents, does your child feel safe at school? Do you feel well communicated with? So yes, we do the annual surveys, but we want to dive deeper into that on the input that we get on school safety.
What would that look like? What would
That's what
we would be figuring out?
Yeah, we would do an assessment. We would find, and we're willing to even look to outside resources, third party, to come in and look over our shoulder, and from their assessment tell us what our strengths and weaknesses are, and see how those compare to perception. And so for perception, then we would want maybe more specific input from students, from our staff, and from our parents. So, but I'm just telling you what we could do.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have that plan, but
And then the challenge would be building something to fit what we feel like the needs would be based on some of that feedback, I'm assuming.
correct.
For instance,
If it was more personnel or
more,
whatever
right.
it is, because personnel, is our biggest expense, And so we want to, if that is the need, then we want to be planning for that as early in the school year for next year as possible.
Would the potential added cost for additional personnel be included in that priority also? With some of the different
Yes.
options, be it SROs or a third-party security company?
Yes, so what we would do is we would come back, we'd be reporting back to the board on a regular basis about the findings. And then, of course, we'd get into our normal budget cycle come January, February with any of those preliminary findings. But you'll know before we even start that budget planning process that what the safety priorities are. And because you know that's coming, if we bring you an initial budget proposal and it doesn't list additional personnel for safety, that'll be the number one question I get asked at that time, you know, is.
So if action was needed, it could be in place potentially before the 24-25 school year?
Yeah, I mean, if we identified an urgent need, I know that we'd have the support of the board to take that step, you know, immediately, especially if it's on a short-term basis. You know, sometimes things flare up and you need more hands on deck, and you just need them until further notice. And so with our local partners, we would be able to respond pretty quickly on those things while we're also building for the future and planning for the future.
Thank you.
Anything else?
We'll bring those back next time. Thank you for your comments and feedback today.
Takes us to number 2, add 1 bus aide, full-time position.
Yes, so we have several bus aides that accompany certain routes where we have students who require additional supervision. In most cases, it's written into their individualized plans. And the way those routes are working out for this fall, we could really benefit from having an additional position. So, and then the way this works into the budget, because we did not budget for this position, is that we would come back with typically in October, we come back with a budget amendment, and so it would reflect this change at that time. But we're confident we can cover this, and we'd like to get this position posted and filled as soon as we can.
Questions or discussion?
Just for clarification, we haven't filled the bus aide positions that we have currently, but we're adding another option?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Just for when they're filled, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd ask for a motion to approve the addition of 1 bus aide, full-time employee position. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Takes us to number 3, the fall regional meeting.
Yeah, we just want to bring the fall meeting to your attention. It will be in Belton on October 4th. And there is in your packet, we had a link if you wanted to go to that MSBA website. And we would just ask that you RSVP to Mrs. Clappin if this is an event that you would be interested in. And we don't need to do that tonight, but if you would just call or text her and let her know your interest, we'd appreciate it.
Looking at their schedule, and I don't see that one.
Region 4.
There it is. Okay. Brings us to board policies.
So first up, we have GBCA, staff conflict of interest. This one we talked about a great deal the last time, and we've got no changes since the last discussion. The main item is the additional prohibitions under item number 9. It just clarifies the interaction between the superintendent and the board when there is a gift. So what the board requested is that if the superintendent is being offered a gift, then instead of calling a board meeting to ask that, then I would simply run that by the board president.
This is an action item, but are there any questions or discussions prior?
Just for clarification for the community, this is for the superintendent role, correct? Not board members benefiting
That is,
financially or taking gifts?
that is correct.
Okay.
The board is accountable under the Missouri Ethics Commission and under your own policies for your conflict of interest. But I think it can be confusing sometimes when we talk about staff conflict of interest policy in the same meetings when we're talking about board conflict of interest policy. So I do not approve your gifts, but you approve my gifts. I report to you. You do not report to me. But this policy also is mostly about employees. So the employees have to run it by their supervisor. And what the board has elected to do is designate that I would report this to the board president, and the board president would, it would be the board president's judgment of whether or not, when and how the rest of the board would need to weigh in on that gift.
Thank you for the
Yes.
clarification.
So I should have thought of this, and it's not a big deal, but what if the board president is unavailable, is in, backpacking in Europe or something? I don't want to, Eddie does a lot of that.
That's not gonna happen either.
So I think it's fine like it is, but, if.
We'd
he's-
probably invoke a different policy in which, in the absence of the president, the vice president
VP.
would
Got
be
it.
the one.
Okay, fair enough.
But does the policy need to reflect a designee?
I don't believe so, because I think there would be other policies that would do that, but there is a
Okay.
policy that kind of gives a chain of command, so I believe we would be covered.
Okay.
I don't get offered gifts. I mean, so
Like, how many
it's,
gifts do you
it
get,
is a
Dr.
really,
Willie?
it's a lot of energy over something that.
That's what I was gonna say. We've spent a lot of time on something you don't get very many of.
It's what we're paid to do.
Yes,
Paid
it
a
is
lot.
important. Conflict of,
Paid a lot.
anything conflict of interest policy language is important. I don't want to downplay it, but I also don't want to portray that I'm just lavishing in gifts.
So
No, this policy is because of other places. We have to spend this much time because somebody else didn't.
That's true.
So I move we approve policy GBCA, staff conflict of interest.
Second.
We'll do a roll call for this. Jared?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I mean, yes? Julie?
Yes.
Okay, so that policy passes. And then there are others. The next one, GCPB.
Yes, this is a first read. This is policy GCPB, resignation of professional staff members. Specifically, the provision that we wish to have some discussion on is liquidated damages. This is a provision that was put in place, I believe, just back in 2020. And this is for a contracted employee who wishes to be excused from their contract basically in the summer months. So there's 3 provisions. If they wish to resign after June 1st, but before July 1st, then there's 2 things that would have to happen. The board would have to approve the release of them from their contract, but then the other thing that would happen is that would be contingent on they would pay $1,000 processing fee for that. Because as we get closer to the start of the next school year, it's more complicated to fill those contracted certified positions. And then the second stage would be between July 1st and August 1st, that dollar amount increases to $3,000. And then after August 1st, it rises to $5,000. So this has been in place for us for a couple of years now. We don't have to use it very often, but we have had to invoke it a few times. And there is also a provision where the board has the discretion under certain circumstances where the board could waive the fee. So in theory, there's different series of actions you could take. You can approve the employee to exit their contract, but you could waive the penalty. And that's really the reason why we bring it up for discussion tonight. And so that's served up for you.
So my first question would be, and reading through this, the only way it can be waived by the board is if it's an illness or disability. Are there other situations that we could waive that need to be listed, or? Because if we decided to waive something, but it wasn't for one of those reasons, somebody enlisted in the military, or I can't think of any real examples, but if there's a reason that we would waive it other than just illness.
Well, I think, like military, that would be the last reason. Performance of the contract has been made impossible for other reasons. So the military would fall under that, but
Or if someone were moving out of state, if it was gonna be physically impossible, for them to serve their role. So I feel like the provision that's in there would cover us
cover
in
everything.
most cases.
are there recommended or any changes that you're recommending or would like us to look at?
I would have a hard time removing this section at this time, given the state of teacher shortage right now. I think it's unfortunate that we're in a situation that we have to have these types of incentives, but I do think it has proven to be a helpful tool. I think moving forward, I think we want to make sure we're just given really tight scrutiny, and that I have all the information, that I have all the facts that the board needs in order to make a concrete decision about anything you may waive. So I don't know that I would change the language of anything. I just think it's important that we reflect on it, as we're coming off the summer.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question, was potentially, is there something that we need to be thinking about, or additional language for potential reasons that someone might need to get out of a contract that we might need to add? I think that's probably what we might need to mull over and really think about between now and the time we
Are you saying
make action on this.
add more scenarios than illness or disability?
Potentially. I think
Okay.
it's something
Yeah,
that's probably what we need to think about more than, removing the language.
Yeah, or just at the discretion of the board. Because I
Yeah.
think there's been different scenarios that's been presented that we would
50
feel the
different.
need to waive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd run around. One, I would want, I don't know why I'm having trouble talking. It may be the tie. I think it's the oxygen.
I
is
did
being
suggest
drawn.
that you get rid of it.
Yeah.
Being choked slowly.
I'm wondering if we need to run it by MSBA if we're gonna go that broad. I think that it's a good idea, but I would wanna get their opinion on that. I also wonder, we've got a 3-tier system now. It's 1,000, then 3,000, then 5. Do we cut out like June? When we've had issues, has it been early in June, or has it really been later in August? And so I wonder if that 3-tier system is necessary, or if we just pick a date, July 15th or whatever, and then it's $5,000 and you're done.
I will say, we can get numbers on that, and we can bring that back. I will say, as it gets later in the summer, the certainty that we're gonna be able to fill that position gets less. So, can you fill a position that's vacated in June? Honestly, it depends on the position. And so that's the tricky part, because you wanna say, well, actually, we get a lot of applicants that do what you do, so we're gonna waive it for that reason, versus there aren't any applicants that do what you do, so we're gonna charge you a different amount. So that part's a little trickier.
Yeah.
And that would be the thing for me, would be, there are positions that June is pretty late in the game, and so I don't mind a little something. But let me visit with the rest of the team about, is there an advantage maybe to taking it down to 2 tiers?
Yeah, what I wouldn't want is a situation where, well, we're gonna waive it for you because that job's easy to fill.
Correct.
This one's difficult, so I just thought maybe June's
Other
not the
options.
right spot, maybe it's just 1 tier and it's somewhere in July or July 1st and it's $5,000. So just kind of that last tier.
Just with
Yeah.
the date change.
Yeah, and maybe that's not necessary, I'm just throwing out
Yeah,
ideas.
that's another way for us to look at it.
The other question I would have is for you guys. So you called it an incentive to make the decision earlier, but if somebody doesn't make it earlier, how many times have they stayed because they didn't want to pay the fee or the fine? And my concern would be if a teacher wants to go, but they're staying because they don't want to pay the 5,000, do we really want them here? So
It's a fair
I was
question.
wondering if there are numbers or if there's any way for you guys to tell us maybe how many have actually stayed because they just either didn't want to or couldn't afford to pay the contract separation
It's,
fee.
yeah, so the question is this provision effective?
Yes.
And is it getting us a desirable result? And that is really hard, it's really hard to measure.
It is. I just don't think we want a teacher here because they can't afford the $5,000.
Yeah, my guess would be that that teacher that doesn't want to stay really doesn't voice that to a whole lot of people, would be my guess.
Unless they're really close.
Yeah.
So it's tough to measure. I hope that it's sometime soon that we can drop all of this, that we can be in a competitive market again, from a standpoint that we've got lots of people wanting to get into the teaching profession in Missouri, and then we don't have to feel so punitive when somebody wants to change course. It's not the most positive place to be.
Out of curiosity, what happens to the money that is paid to us? So if it's a 1,000, 3,000, or 5,000, where does that money go and what happens to it?
General operating, I assume.
Would you be able to use that as a incentive bonus to fill the position? If somebody had to pay $5,000 to get out of their contract, could you take that $5,000 and put it to the job posting of we have a $5,000 incentive?
Signing bonuses?
Signing bonus.
There are some pretty strict restrictions through Teacher Tenure Act that keeps us from doing teacher signing bonuses or treating one category of teacher differently than another category of teacher. You will hear, though, state legislature, when they propose their bills, you will sometimes see language that would allow us to pay some teachers differently than other teachers. So there is occasionally legislation that would change some of those expectations.
I guess I don't look at it as paying one group of teachers differently than another. It's trying to fill whatever role, whether it's this time it's a science teacher, next time it's a math teacher.
Well, that's tough though. So like if I went about it in the appropriate, if I was the top candidate in February and we had 6 candidates and then we went to our bottom of the pool candidate in July and then they got the bonus, but I was the top candidate, like that's tough if we're hiring for the same position. Like if we're hiring for 2nd grade and then this one was incentivized because they did it late versus the one that we really wanted did it the way they wanted it to do, that becomes tricky. I don't know where that goes, but that becomes tricky. I would like the money to go to the teachers, absolutely. I don't know how to do that appropriately.
Dr. Welly, I think what you touched on earlier, I think would solve some of these, you can't do for one that you don't do for all kind of thing. Yeah. And it's like, would a teacher resign and then rehire to get the, it opens up so many different scenarios, I think. But in your list of priorities of getting more competitive, equal to other districts that we're attracting and retaining, I think would alleviate some of those other items. So
It would be nice to get back to the point where the only reason the teacher leaves is because they're leaving education completely.
That's it.
They're not going to another school district, but they just don't want to be a teacher and be in education anymore.
So as far as the signing bonus, we're sure that we can't do that?
Yeah, we can't, like, the word bonus is something that we
Change the
can't-
word.
We can't have, that people can't have bonuses. So, no. So,
I understand that. I think there should be some workaround.
Signing extra duty pay.
I'll work on it. Thank you.
How are other school districts, though, doing sign-on bonuses for like sped teachers and things like that? There are other districts who are offering.
I think they just, it's the semantic thing. I don't think they actually call them bonuses, but there might be other, compensated for other duties assigned with that specific position.
That sounds like it should just go back into general operating.
And that's where the money does go. I mean, in theory,
It just sounds
go
like
to
it
help
gets
us
very cumbersome.
promote the job and things like that. It offsets some of that cost, but
Anything else? And then the last set of MSBA policies.
Yeah, so this is the first read for this next set of policies. MSBA has revised these in accordance with Senate Bill 681, which resulted in an extensive rewrite of state statutes concerning reading instruction. And so the first four policies all address instructional practices, interventions, promotion, acceleration, and retention, and assessment. And then, as is often the case with legislation, sometimes there's other things that are tacked on. And so the Holocaust Education Week designation was added on ceremonies and observances. So that's the fifth policy. So we're just getting these to our folks for the first time, and we're just getting them to you for the first time. So we will definitely take time to talk through them the next time we meet. But we would take any questions, observations, or curiosities if you've had a chance to look at those.
I have some curiosities on the policy, I think it's the last one, ceremonies and observances.
Okay.
With those, the ones that are already on there that are required by law is super surprising, like Bird Appreciation Day. And I was just curious as to how we are observing those things. Yeah, I just didn't know that existed. As well as some of the others on here. And I'm sure it's covered in, like, it's so broad that it's probably covered at some point in some time with some grade level.
Yeah.
But like these are, yeah, the Patriots Day and.
We can bring that back when and how those are being addressed. And if we find holes, like for example, if Bird Appreciation Week is not being addressed accordingly.
March 21st,
Well,
mark your
I-
calendars.
It's just a day.
Oh, thank
a
you.
day.
Yeah, it,
There's a lot of birds.
it does
But-
say that there's some key words here. It says should observe. It doesn't say
Should, okay.
required. And then below it says may. It does not say
Should.
we are
It says
required.
as required by law.
Yeah.
But
Teachers and students should.
But if you may or you should in accordance with law, it's still a may or a should.
Okay,
The
fair
law
enough.
sometimes does that to us, but
Yeah.
but I don't want to short any particular observable holiday, and so we'll track it down, and when we talk about it next time, we'll let you know if it's getting done, if it's not getting done, and if it needs to get done, what our plan is for getting it
I
done.
mean, I have no passion about that day, but. I'm just
Somebody somewhere.
Curious. Yeah, clearly,
did.
it's made it in.
Yes,
They're gonna
it
be a
is the law.
They should have-
Follow-up item.
What's that?
Is that going to be a follow-up item?
This will be a
Follow-up item,
follow-up item.
yeah.
Yes.
They should
Bird-
observe that one in the classroom, by the way. We don't need that day off.
Fair enough.
Well, and I'm
They
curious.
should.
Most of these say either Remembrance or Appreciation Day, but the Holocaust part says Education Week. So is there curriculum moving towards teaching the
Yes.
kids about the Holocaust?
Yes, and that's on DESI's to-do list, and that'll all be in place by the spring of the 25-26 school year. So we have a little time on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't usually give us that much time to prepare.
Because that's a tough topic.
It's a big topic.
So, and it, very political and, anyway, I just, all the rest of the days were just recognizing Missouri Day or Pearl Harbor Remembrance, I see that. But that one specifically said Education Week. So I was curious. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
And we do have an executive session tonight.
Go ahead.
I move we meet in executive session.
Lance?
Yes.
Julie? Jason? Yes.
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I want to clarify for the record, we're going into executive session under subsection 610021, number 1.